Welcome to The Courage Effect. It is Suzanne. It is spring 2025, and I am going back into the archive again. And this is a show with somebody who is a dear friend and has also been a business partner for me, somebody that I hired when I was starting my company, who made a significant difference in not only my business, but in me as an entrepreneur and as a human. This is a show with Lenora Edwards. Lenora Edwards is a CEO advisor for business growth, and her conversation today is really about courage and trusting ourselves on the entrepreneurial journey or even beyond. This isn't just a conversation for those of us that are entrepreneurs. We talk quite a bit about the journey of starting a business. How do we learn from mistakes and the balance of what she calls logic and creativity in business? The conversation really emphasizes partnership, feedback, and the idea of pushing beyond our comfort zones. Some of my favorite sound bites from this show are her saying, trust yourself and trust your instincts. And I think my all-time favorite in this show is, what could this be? The idea of thinking about what you might be able to create and not limiting yourself. It's a fantastic conversation that still resonates, and I'm sure that you will enjoy it. Thank you for being here. Welcome to The Courage Effect. I'm Suzanne Weller, and this is a show about growth and unleashing what's possible. You will hear inspiring stories about what courage looks like, how we navigate what's getting in our way, and the opportunities that surface when we choose courage over comfort. Let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's Suzanne, and I am thrilled to be in another conversation with you about courage. So today's guest is, she's a dear friend of mine, and she has been instrumental in me building my business, because when I took my business from a side hustle in 2020 and went to full-time, it was really important for Weller Collaboration to be successful and for me to be spending my time in the most effective way and paying attention to what I needed to be spending it on. And really, truly, I didn't know what I didn't know. So when you start a business, there's definitely quite a bit of lack of knowledge, and you have to be comfortable with that. And I decided that I needed to partner somebody that was really going to help me to spend my time the most wisely, really help me get my value proposition together, and help me to trust myself. That really was a big mantra for me, was trust myself. And that partner was Lenora Edwards. Lenora Edwards is a business development consultant for CEOs. Her clients hire her to help them design, develop, and build their businesses on their own terms. Her value add is acceleration of the revenue generating process. She's known for helping those of us with especially unique value propositions, and many regard her as their ad hoc business partner who never tries to take equity. Her expertise spans professional services, retail, and manufacturing in both domestic and international markets. And since launching her practice, her community of satisfied clients keeps growing, including me, nearly all by referral. It's her dream job, and it shows. Lenora, I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome to The Courage Effect.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here. Nice to see you.
Oh, thank you for being here. So as I said in the intro, my mantra really was trust myself. And you were a big part of helping me do that. When we partnered, it really was in support of that. And that does take a lot of courage. And I know that's one of the things that we've talked about a lot over the past few years is courage in trust. And I'd love for us to kick off with that as a topic. So as I say that courage and trust, what surfaces for you?
Well, it's the idea of honoring what's already there, what's valuable, and what you know to be true and what you feel to be true. And it's really hard to do in a society that we're in, which is all about, looking around and comparing and not necessarily and saying, oh, is that a best practice? Is that a better way to do it? Or being competitive rather than going inside and saying, I feel this and sense that, therefore the action I take will look like this, which will serve me and who I'm serving very well. And that was something I really admired about you from the get-go. You had a formidable corporate background. So you had a lot of business experience. So you came to the table just with lots of insights and skills and habits that lent themselves to being an entrepreneur and owning your own business and growing it.
Thank you for that. It's so interesting though. I mean, and you know this as well, when you shift from, relying on that paycheck, even though you're hustling for it, when you're hustling for yourself, it is definitely it's a different set of rules. And I mean, I remember you saying to me, let's figure this out together. And that was music to my ears. And I knew, I was like, okay, this is the right person.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and let's figure it out together includes you and relying on your experience and your intuition and what you're sensing, because, I've had plenty of times where clients have said, I just love what you came up with, as we roll out an initiative or come up with a hypothesis for marketing. And I go, I didn't come up with it. Actually, it was something you shared. And, it's now been merchandised into something that's appropriate for this time. And I could see the enthusiasm you had and the excitement and also the passion for it, which to me means there's a lot of belief and that courage to go forward. And let's face it, starting a business is a leap of faith. And we have to keep going back to, okay, if I'm going to do this, why is it going to work for me? I have no evidence that it's going to work for me because I have not yet gained that. So it's all about, you got to trust what's inside. You got to have a bit of faith. And you also, have the benefit, like you did in general, people who have corporate experience, who have other experiences where they were successful, even if it's not corporate, it's just other experiences where they were successful. It's like, we have to go, okay, why would I suddenly be a big old flop? Right. Yeah. So, but it does take courage to do it, because most people don't take that route. They will go to the self-doubt. Here's how someone else is doing it better. I don't have these things. It truly does take courage to trust yourself and to trust someone else to figure something out.
Well, and I think that's one of the magic things that you bring to the table too, is that you don't make people feel bad for what they don't know. And it's, I mean, as you sort of said, the idea of being comfortable with what you don't know, that's okay, because you can learn it, because you do have some of those background, those chops of what you've done in the past to really be able to build on.
Yeah. And there are instincts, that you're in the habit of using and navigating your life with. I also like to build on strengths, what's there, and not worry about what's not there, because like you said, it can be learned, or you can hire someone to help you with that other part. Lots of ways to work around it and still have a great time with what you do know, rather than focusing on what you don't know.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your instincts, when you started trusting them and you actually went out on your own.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I was in the corporate world for about 15 years, and I worked for all kinds of different people as I, climbed the corporate ladder and got different experiences. And I was really fortunate because I was appointed a few times to behave and do things in roles that had never been created before. And so after a while, I was like, that's what consultants do, like maybe this is what I should be doing. And what I noticed every time I stepped into one of those corporate roles where there was like a need, there was a dire need. There was a time when the department store retailer I was working for was moving from a union-based company-owned distribution facility to outsourcing to a non-union based. So the rules are totally different, how people are motivated to respond and get things done. And I had to go in there with a small team of 3 others and help get things on track quickly, because there was a learning curve for this new company. So again, I had to rely on what's worked in the past in other roles I had. And I also got to rely on this great team of people. I have to say there was a shortage of mentors in that role, because warehouse operations and merchandising people think very differently. So we put our heads together and did that. So there were times like that. But then, one of my most remarkable things that I lean on is a time when I made an error in buying. And I was I was working on some reorders, and I dictated the wrong columns of numbers to my factory representative. And therefore we ended up with like triple the amount of triple the amount of inventory that we should have had, that was coming on a boat from overseas. And I caught my error and let him know. He was like, I can't undo this. This is terrible. So sort of like how you and I began, it was like, well, let's figure this out together. So he and I talked through what the options were. And his main thing was, I can't lose face with this factory. And my main thing was, even though my company would allow me to cancel these orders, I would feel terrible about it. And it's not the kind of partner I've been with you. So let's do something in the spirit of partnership. So we figured out a way that he could warehouse. He happened to have a warehouse this product in the United States, and I would place weekly orders. and bring in those reorders quickly and fill in. And, we ended up exponentially growing that category because I was filling in the merchandise faster and there were no holes in the customer experience. So didn't have any lost opportunity costs there anymore. So it worked out. We became really good partners working together. In fact, I eventually designed a job description for myself and invited myself to go work for him. And I was his first director of marketing in his importing firm. So that was a real boost to take this really scary and very embarrassing mistake and doing that and like coming up with a solution collaboratively and it being a success story for both of us. And then it was a great partnership and we co-created a lot of growth. First for my company and then for his company when I joined. After a while, like taking the leap and moving over to self-employment, I started realizing that my instincts were really good and I had enough experience to be trusted to go in and figure out what people would need. And this is something a lot of my clients are nervous about, and I don't blame them because I have experienced it myself. The idea that someone's just told me what their problem is, I don't necessarily have the direct experience. Like I can't say I actually solved that exact problem. I have to have the courage to step forward and say, I can figure out how to solve this problem, especially in partnership with someone where we both see the same issues and we both have the same desire for the outcome. And over again, every time I approach a new client, every time I started my business, and I did restart it following the the 2001 .com bust. And so there were issues about I've never done this before. And I had to keep saying, you know what, your talent is for figuring it out. And actually, I'd say that's what all my clients have as well. When we work together, I'm just accelerating that path so that they can have more fun in the profit sooner than planned.
Well, such a great story. I mean, that really speaks to courage and ownership, taking responsibility for a mistake. And I mean, that really is turning lemons into lemonade.
Yeah.
Taking that moment of like, oh no, what have I done, into, okay, what does this give me the potential opportunity to do?
Right. And that potential, that's where all the fun is the idea of, well, what could this be? And sometimes we have concepts, ideas of how it's going to be, and it actually turns out better because we got creative, or maybe there was something that came up that made us be a lot more resourceful than we planned. And that's okay. In Entrepreneurial, that happens quite a bit. And I'm not usually thrown when there's a curveball, that comes our way, or something that looks like a disaster. It's usually an opportunity.
And I can also speak to that from personal experience with you, is that, I mean, it is that sort of calming effect, right? It's just a matter of like, okay, having that fear at first, like what is potentially going to happen here, but then being able to like learn to talk myself down, yeah. if that makes sense. But I love that phrase, what could this be? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that really is the core of so much of what you do, and allowing people to see their own path and to give them the courage to be able to find it.
Yes. And I'm thinking about a client of mine who I one time was out running. We went up to a business lunch, and then afterwards we had an errand that he needed to run. I said, I'll go with you. It's on the way to the parking lot. And there was a problem to be solved at this retailer. And it was a young person, who obviously was new in his role and very nervous about following the rules. And I just remember my client leaning across the counter and saying, we're two smart people. We can figure out what to do here. And watching the person's confidence and their courage come up, like, okay, let's play. And they did solve the problem. And I just chuckled, and I thought, and that's why he's successful in his business too. And in his life as well. We're two smart people. We can figure this out.
And that's fun. I mean, you're also talking about like the creativity and the fun and the joy of actually partnering together. So yes, so good. So good. Well, we need to take a quick break. So let's do that for some ads, and we will be right back. This is Suzanne. Please stay tuned. Each episode of The Courage Effect offers you a chance to meet inspiring guests, hear their stories, and spread what we call courageous contagion. The podcast's mission is to amplify courage in your lives, workplaces, and communities. So how can you be a conduit for courage and support this podcast? The best no-cost way is simple. Subscribe or follow The Courage Effect and leave a comment or a review. You taking the time to do this helps us get the word out, to reach more people and amplify what's important to you. It also ensures that you won't miss any future episodes. I'm so honored that you're a part of this community, and I'm glad you're here. Now back to the show. Welcome back to The Courage Effect. This is Suzanne. I'm in conversation with Lenora Edwards. So Lenora, in your business, because you really are partnering with entrepreneurs to prosper on their own terms, that takes, as we talked about before, courage, but it also, it puts you in the role of not just supporting people, but pushing people out of their comfort zone and into a space where, they'll start to really trust themselves. Talk a little bit about that, because I know that plays a pretty big role in what you do.
Yeah, it really does. And, some people usually thank me later for pushing them so hard, but at the time it's difficult because they aren't feeling particularly confident in it. And sometimes what I am proposing may not be completely logical, right? I love this advertising saying that I remember from many years ago: without the logic, nobody will believe you. And without the magic, nobody will care. And sometimes my clients come to me with a value proposition that is not properly balanced between the magic and logic. And usually it's too heavy on the logic side. And I'm like, that's so logical. I'm not sure what would make somebody lean in and want to buy from you. And it's like, it has no feeling to it. And so let's look at the magic of how you deliver that and start talking about that. And there's a lot of hesitation in this area. People go, well, doesn't everybody do that? Isn't that what everyone does? No. And so that's why I insist on interviewing my clients' clients, so I can learn more about not just the impact of the work and the deliverables, but also how the client felt, what the user experience was like. It's just like, I'm like, you have got to learn to talk about that when you're marketing yourself, because you want clients who resonate with you. So, always later, I get really great support, when people come back and say, I see it now, but they usually need proof. So impressing someone, I've even had to do it in kind of a weird way. This is like the oddest example. The idea that there were two occasions in all these clients in 2 decades, there were 2 occasions where we created the business and it launched and it was cash flowing. And my clients, these two, unrelated to one another, really hated it. They didn't like the business. They didn't like how they had to perform in the business. They weren't necessarily feeling aligned with their clients. And in those 2 cases, I said, well, we're just going to have to start over. And I'm not going to charge you again. We're not redoing a contract. You're supposed to have a business that you want to thrive in. And so we got the money part right, but we didn't get the alignment with how you want to prosper. Talking those 2 people into it was hard because they were super attached to their ideas. And I had to keep pointing to, but look at how you feel, and that's what, if you think of courage residing in some engine and of who we are, if it's getting crowded out with unpleasantness and, drained feelings, etc., it's really hard for courage to grow and become like the part of you that really makes a performance, a pleasing performance, possible. So I was successful in helping them say, I can't endorse this. I'm watching how you're coming to our meetings, how you speak about these businesses. It has to stop. We have to go back to like our initial conversations and what you said you wanted, and choose something else that still comes from your great experience where you can deliver value, but has you performing and creating and using your gifts and talents in a way that makes you feel good with people you want to help. Those were the hardest ones, so the first one I mentioned is like everyone goes through that makes sense, but those were like the show-stopping ones. And part of having courage is also the idea that you don't have to be right or be attached to old ideas. And that's hard for us because in the corporate world, It's all about track record. It's all about, you said in your performance, objectives, you were going to do something. Now you did it. Well, what if halfway through the year you learned that performance wasn't actually going to serve the company? Some of us, were burned at the stake for pointing that out and changing it, and also rewarded later. But it was just, it's very hard in that more rigid structured world to color outside the lines, to say, I think I see another path here. And that's what I really love watching my clients adopt, is that idea that you don't have to be looking straight ahead. You can use your peripheral vision. You can look around. You can ask others. You can ask yourself. That's what I want clients to do most. Ask yourself. So when you ask yourself, what comes up here? Because you got a lot of good intel, and I want to hear that before anything else.
So kudos to you for actually having the fortitude. I mean, that's courage, but also, I mean, there's also a lot of additional work that goes into that with you, right? I mean, you're investing even further with that. And it sounds like both of them were a little bit hesitant at first, but both of them came around to the recommendations of changing.
Yeah. And they still have those businesses. And I'd say it's 10 plus years for both of them. So, so it stuck. Because that's the other thing is I said, I want it to stick. And, you can change things along the way. No worries. But fundamentally, this is the wrong business for you. And someone along the line told you that. And, now that I'm thinking about this happens in initial prospect meetings many times, where someone's telling me what they're going to do. And I can tell they're well-versed in it, and they've been discussing it with others. And maybe they've looked at their resume and said, yes, I should be doing that. But at the very end of the meeting, in the last 5 minutes, they go, let me tell you something crazy. And I think, okay, this is it. This is the real part of the business, and it won't be so completely different, but it'll be a unique way they want to deliver on it, or a unique set of people, or a channel they want to serve. And so when they say that, I go, yeah, that's what we're going to do. I want to help you with that, because now you're not a commodity. Now you've got a truly unique value proposition, and you don't need every client on the planet to come to you. You need your clients to come to you. So let's make sure we're really good about talking about that for your website, and of course to your referral partners, and that you are going to get your dream. But it's really funny how people usually use the word crazy. And when I was working in an office, there was a whiteboard. I'd be like, oh, whoa, you go grab a pen, start sketching it out. It was phenomenal. It was a fantastic experience. Now, how do you feel about that? Well, fired up. I'm like, okay, that's what we're going to do. And it's my job to make sure it makes money. I mean, that's definitely, my clients are the breadwinners, the rainmakers in their family, and it has to cash flow. So I'm not doing it just for fun. I'm doing it for their living, for how they're going to prosper.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I mean, so much of it reminds me of the work I do in coaching, right? The idea of like, what is the blue sky? What like giving them that pen to be able to draw out, like, if you could just like incarnate something that is kind of harebrained, or, really what you would dream of, there is something to be said about that. And I love the idea of, sort of then doing a work back of, okay, if that's what it is, how then do we make it profitable, that you're really harnessing that possibility with them?
Well, and that you're touching on something that I'm really excited about. And that is not getting hung up about what is while you figure out the how. And many times that could be exactly what gets in the way, is figuring out how. It's like, let's figure out what, and especially make sure there's a good why behind it, because I think that's very motivating. And then the how, we're smart people. We can figure it out. We can do that. But I think that a lot of, I kind of wonder if it comes from traditional school learning, where it's a kind of a linear thing. And so the how leads up to the what. In math, show your work, how you got to this. Well, sometimes there are gaps. And then that's where you work with other people to figure out where the gaps are. But that's where the courage comes in, to say, okay, we're smart people. I'm a smart person. I've got a lot of experience. I'm so fixated on this what. I'm certain I can come up with the how. And for me, I sometimes can't help myself when I have to, course correct with a client a little bit. And I'll say, I'm so fixated on this vision that you created for me when we met, I can't let go of it. So the how, like, let's just continue to figure that out. There's going to be a breakthrough. By the way, usually preceded by a breakdown. So I'm excited to get those. Like, oh, good, that happened. Okay, we can now do the breakthrough and move forward.
Yeah, and that can be part of the process, right? Because that's where you need to deconstruct what you've essentially constructed to this point.
Right. And it is not easy to do because of attachment. I mean, I think that courage comes from lack of attachment. It's just like, that's a bunch of information over here. And we really do have to like put it in a little box, a compartment, leave it over here and say, if this keeps showing up for me, what is it? It's generally not a crazy idea. I don't think I've heard in all this time with all these clients a crazy idea that wasn't business worthy. There's this glimmer, this thing, this opportunity. And it's like, okay, I can usually help them find the gold in it. And the other thing that happens, even with like kind of concrete things like writing back and forth, like the messaging and how it evolves over time. And you and I did that. We riffed on some messaging in the very beginning. And so it's fun for me to say, well, these aren't the right words, but how about the feeling is da, 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 and then I'll have some clumsy thing I share. And then my client comes back. It just came back to me this morning in an email from a client. We worked on a short script for a referral partner email. And she said, it's just missing a couple of things that indicate the personal connection and the fun. And so she changed 3 lines. And it became a magnificent email that truly represented her and the opportunity that she was presenting in this email. And I love that kind of words and music way that I get to work with my clients. Yeah, it's fun. And they get the results that they need because they have the ultimate say in what goes out. And they usually can. And that's another thing that fortifies the courage is the confidence that comes from, oh my gosh, I did ultimately come up with that. I just added what I saw so that they could look again and then come up with a different take.
Yeah. And what I'm also hearing too is also having the courage to ask for feedback, right? I mean, like them basically putting it out there and being ready to have that, maybe picked apart a little bit and getting comfortable with not being attached to what they think it needs to look like right now.
Yeah. On the picking apart, when someone shows me something they have been doing, I'm usually, I'll just say, you know what, there's the one thing that's holding you back here is the blah, blah. I won't go through with a red pen. It's like, it's the one thing. So how do we get that back in there? Usually they're taking the personality out of it. So like a little too dry, too much logic, not enough magic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love the whole logic magic equation. And unfortunately, we need to wrap up. This is such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for being here. I want to give a couple of highlights of what I'm taking away. Courage comes from lack of attachment, which I think is so important for us to really have the opportunity to ask, what could this be? And trusting your intuition and really leveraging the power of partnership. So Lenora, thank you for being my guest. Thank you for being a partner. We will make sure that all of your information is on the website. And I hope that all of you enjoyed this conversation today. Thank you. Stay courageous. The Courage Effect is brought to you by Weller Collaboration. We partner with individuals, teams, and organizations to enhance leadership, increase agility, and build effective teams. More information about us is available via the links in our show notes. Please spread the word about the Courage Effect. Rate and review your favorite episodes on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Share with your colleagues, family, and anyone in your universe who might be inspired by a good dose of courage. If you have feedback or stories to share about the show or would like to apply to be a guest, please contact us via our website. Benny Mathers is our producer. Dave Nelson composed our theme music. Alex Sandyforth is our administrative maven, and I'm your host, Suzanne Weller.